Hello, beautiful. And what I'd like to know is what's good in your life today? This is Kia with another episode of the Female Veterans Podcast. Today I have with me Ashton. She's an Air Force veteran. She served 7 years and she is also an author. She's got an incredible book called Becoming Her: How to Become a Survivor. And it's on Amazon, and you should definitely go check this one out. She has a very big story, and I know you can't wait to hear it. So we're going to jump right into it. Welcome, Ashton.
Thank you.
It's such a pleasure to have you here with me today. So tell me, what made you join the military?
Both my parents are Air Force veterans as well. I was born at the Air Force Academy in Colorado. They were enlisted. And, I was going to college. I was 19. Well, I guess to backtrack before that, I moved a lot as a kid. And a lot of people thought I was already like a military brat, but I moved a lot because of my dad's job after the military. So he worked for Interstate Batteries for a while and then eventually opened his own battery spot. But I was in college and I was super sheltered growing up. And I really liked the medical field, but I was struggling with the memorization of trying to remember all the biology. I was trying to go for respiratory therapy. And, when you start getting a C, you have to make all A's and B's. So my mom was kind of like, why don't you just consider the military? And so one day, because I wanted the opportunity to travel and I also wanted to be financially independent. So the more I thought about it, it seemed interesting to me. So I kind of one day just went on my own to talk to a recruiter and kind of did it all. And then I kind of just told my mom I had signed up to take the ASVAB. And then it kind of all just happened fast. And then I ended up putting when you go to basic, I really wanted to just go overseas. And so I remember them saying, well, so what you have to do is just don't put any stateside, just put all overseas. So my first base was England and I was super excited. But then I remember telling my mom and she was just like, wait, England? I think she meant New York. She thought like somewhere in the States. No, mom, go overseas. So she was like, oh, can you do the recruiter thing first? So I ended up coming back. It was like 6 weeks, worked with the recruiter. And that was fun. And I just went to schools, talked about the military. And I remember we did runs and all that before I actually went out to England. So I didn't actually go out there until May, but I joined in January, but I did the recruiter program first. So yeah, that's why.
Wow. So a family history. You went on your own, and your mom was thinking New England and you were
Yeah.
going to Europe. That's
hmm
wild. I know she must have been like, hold on. So then don't don't just go overseas and disappear. And did your mom give you any insights, or was she able to help prepare you for what it would be like to be a woman in the military?
I mean, honestly, the way I was brought up was to be strong. Don't let people see your weaknesses. I love my parents. They're super supportive, but I think I didn't really know what I was getting into. They pretty much just said you can trust them. They're like your brothers and sisters. I think I was overly trusting and I kind of set myself up for a lot in that aspect.
I can see how that could happen with that being the information. So one of my cousins was in the Air Force, and before I left to the Navy, so I chose Navy, and it was down to Navy or Air Force of which branch I was going to go into. Because let's face it, I'm no Marine. If you've ever seen me, I mean, maybe I could have done it. Maybe I'm selling myself short, but I didn't think I could as a 17-year-old girl. And that's when I enlisted. I took the ASVAB in high school. I didn't even take my SATs. I just knew, right? So I was like, why bother taking the ASVAB, going in after graduation? I already knew. And as my mom was selling me on this idea to join the military, she had me speak to my cousin who was in the Air Force. And
hmm
my cousin was like, oh, it's great. The Air Force is the best branch. We have the best food. It's more laid back than any other branch. You're going to love it. It's cool. The people are amazing. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I should go to the Air Force. And I think I told this story on the podcast before, but I went in to see the recruiter. I was in private school. Shout out to Milton Hershey School. And the recruiter came in, and I went in to see the Navy recruiter, and he was all sloppy in his uniform. And I was like,
hmm
that guy's in the military? And I
Oh my
remember he
God.
was like, I forgot my presentation. You forgot your presentation? Yeah. He's like, but sit down, ask me anything you want about the Navy, and I'll
Yeah.
tell you. So we sat down. And my questions were, how much fun can I have in the Navy? Will I get to see the world? I was 17. What did I know to ask, really? I just was in private school and wanted freedom, but I knew I was going to the military. So I was like, is there a balance between how much fun I can have and doing this military stuff? Right. And he was like, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, if you want to have fun, the Navy is where you need to go. So you need to go to the Navy. And I don't know, this guy looks like a slob. The Navy kind of seems like a joke. Let me go and see the Air Force recruiter. So the
Hmm.
next day I went to see the Air Force recruiter. And let me tell you, this man was flawless. He was just perfectly set in that uniform, was pristine. Everything was on point. His shoes, everything, his whole stature, his whole way of being. He gave me this hour-long detailed presentation. It was on point. And I thanked him and I told the Navy recruiter, I'm joining the Navy. Right. Because from that, I saw this guy, he's really on point, and I think what I wanna do is have more fun. So, for me, joining the Navy was about having fun, and I did do that. I did have more fun than anybody should have while they're serving in the military for a while. But the Air Force seemed like a really good option, and I think my cousin really sold it, and if I had listened to her and gone in to the Air Force, I might not have been prepared, right? Because the reality, even in the Navy, it wasn't all sparkly and shiny and good times and good things, you know?
Hmm.
I always say that I had the best time in the military until the day I didn't. So, which brings me to my next question for you. What was boot camp like for you?
I mean, honestly, the yelling and all that, I feel like my dad kind of prepared me for that because I felt like I was raised by a drill instructor. He was a weapons instructor, and my mom, she helped deliver babies in the medical field. So I felt like I was pretty prepared to handle the yelling and all that because I'm 90s baby. So getting yelled at, that all that get toughened you up. So when girls would be crying at night because they would be yelled at, I would just be like, can you just shut up? I'm just trying to sleep. The yelling, all that was fine. But, there's other things when we would be marching, they wouldn't let us pee, little thing, but they made us keep drinking water. And so there would be times we would have to just pee ourselves. So that happened. And we kind of just, they couldn't say anything because they knew that they made us like do that. When I went to basic training, I didn't find this out until my second base, but I went when there was that whole investigation. It came out later, but that whole thing happened with the TIs. There was a whole sexual scandal at San Antonio when I was there. I just remember them saying things like I was such a good girl until the military screwed that up. But I just remember them being like, don't get locked in a closet. You don't want to be alone in a closet with certain TIs. And I'm like, what are they talking about? I feel like my unit, we were the knights, 324 knights. But I was confused because we had 9 different ones go in and out. And I don't know why it kept rotating. I still don't really get that. But I had long, thick hair. And I always got made fun of. I remember one time one of the TIs was like, this looks like a blooming onion from Outback Steakhouse. And so I was just so tired of trying. Girls would be in the bathroom lined up for hours doing each other's sock buns to sleep. And I'm like, I'd rather just get sleep because we had to get up at like 4 a.m. for PT. So one day I was like, I just want to go to the barbershop with the boys. I want to cut it off. And they were like, are you sure? It's going to be ugly. It's not going to be cute. And I'm like, I don't care. And from there on, life just got easier. That's when I cut my hair and it made a big difference. That was liberating. And then I just started learning the tricks because I think I joined as A-type perfectionist. And then I realized everybody just does little shortcuts to get faster. You know what I mean? So then I started learning that. And then it just got easier from there. But I think cutting my hair is kind of when like the game changed in basic training.
I
Yeah.
can see how that could be, right?
Mhm.
There's a lot of time trying to make sure that your hair is satisfactory, right?
Yeah.
So it's, not having to worry about that shaves time off, makes things more convenient. I noticed you said that you were listening to the girls crying because they got yelled at. I remember that too. And I didn't get yelled at much. I mean, we all got yelled at as a group. Obviously, we got cycled, all of that good stuff. But I don't remember being phased by the yelling because I grew up with it too. But then again, I was in boot camp in the 90s. So,
Uh,
so it was a different time.
I don't remember the beat part, but I remember the emotional abuse.
Wait, so what I mean by getting beat, maybe you don't know the term, but maybe you experienced it called something else because different branch and different era, right? So did they ever make you all in a group do crazy amounts of exercise while they're yelling at you?
Yeah, but I actually like doing that.
Well, it wasn't horrible, right? But it was
Yeah.
stressful, right? So if you're
Yeah.
in shape, you're doing a million burpees, push-ups, sit-ups, calisthenics, that kind
Uh-huh.
of workout, but they're doing it so fast and they're
Yeah.
screaming at you that it's so stressful. So a lot of people would break down after that, right? And a lot
That's,
of the girls would be crying through that process and all of that stuff because they were really just trying to work you way past fatigue. I don't know that I can say I enjoyed it per se. I mean, I wasn't broken by it. I hated doing it. I like exercising, but
yeah.
that's probably why I wasn't broken by it, right? But I just was like, whoever did whatever they did should catch a
Yeah.
beat down by everybody for this. Whatever we were getting in trouble, because it's a group punishment for somebody doing something or whatever. But you guys did experience that. You just didn't mind.
Yeah, I mean, as far as exercise goes, though, I do remember the vaccines and walking through, and it was this line, and it's just a million needles coming at you, and it's just boom, 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 boom. And then after that, we had to run 2 miles, and we were just told to rub it out. That was a lot.
That is a lot. That is a lot. I mean, I don't think people realize what we experience in boot camp and the different facets of it,
Yeah.
that you have to go through. And the sleep deprivation is a big part of it.
Mhm.
And like it's all just working together. What you said about the marching until you peed on yourself, that's rough, man. We didn't experience anything like that when I was in. I mean, maybe was in a company that was just a little bit different, but we didn't have to pee on ourselves. We got 5 minutes pump and dump. So
Oh, we would be asking, and they would just be like, "Keep marching." Yeah. I think that's why to this day I hold my pee. I'm like, "No, I got more stuff to do. I just gotta hold it." It's weird. I think that has something to do with that.
that's a good point because we did have to hold it, but we made it. It was not so long in the day where people were peeing on themselves. At least I don't remember anybody peeing on themselves. But there were only strategic moments throughout the day. And it was like, what, 100 girls? And it was 5 minutes pump and dump, all of you in this line trying to. And if you don't
Mhm.
absolutely have to go, you don't go because, it's only 5 minutes and there's so many of you that have to go. I think the thing for me about boot camp that was really crazy was that there were no stalls on the bathroom doors. That was my sticking point where we all have to go to the bathroom and there's no privacy, right?
Yeah.
Just for
Mhm.
any like
And
the
the
lack of
showers
privacy.
together
Yeah.
and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, the lack of private. I mean, I had the open bay showers in like gym and school. So I was aware of them, but it was a different there's 8 of you in the shower together in boot
Yeah.
camp and it's a whole different situation and then you're going fast because everybody's got to get through so it's a 2-minute shower.
And then some people that would take longer, then the TIs would come in and then freak out because, they were males and they're like, why is there someone still in the shower? Like that
Oh
kind of
my god.
stuff.
So our company commanders, I think they're called RDCs now in the Navy, but that might have changed because it's been a lot of years. But for when I was in, they were called company commanders. We had a female. So we had one male, one female, but we're half guys in our company. So the male would be downstairs at the barracks and below us, like at the
Mhm.
bay below us. And then the female was with us. Can't remember her name now, but she was pretty decent and she was tough, but she was pretty decent. She was like tough but fair. And she was always on us, like always on us, always on us. So
Yeah.
you guys had men and they would come in there.
We had 9 different ones. Some were females, some were males. I remember there was like 2 main ones, but there were 9 total that were in and out.
Well, I
So,
imagine that's why it was confusing. You
yeah.
don't establish any connection when they're just rotating through. I don't know. That would have felt very unsettling, I think, for me.
Yeah. And I think it's because of the stuff that was going on behind the scenes that I didn't know about until I got to Travis. And with my job being services, I talked to a lot of different people. And I remember I was working at the gym, and one of the girls there told me that she had to go talk to OSI because she was at basic training in that squadron that it had happened to. It was the Bulldogs. Yeah.
Oh, goodness. So I get it now. And after I left boot camp, I think I just talked about this for the first time on another episode I did recently. I just recorded recently. But there was some happenings taking place with another company. One of the company commanders was hooking up with the girls, and he'd been doing it for cycles of females coming in. And he was a married guy, and obviously that's against the UCMJ.
Mhm.
So, there was a whole drama that took place after that. And then even when I was in A school, in core school, I didn't know until after I graduated and I became staff. But I became staff at the base where basic training is for Navy at Great Lakes, right? And one of my instructors was hooking up with one of the people in my class. And I didn't even know. I had no clue. I was so naive. I had no clue until
Mm.
after we had all graduated. And then the rumor finally came out. And there was like a lot of stuff that surrounded that. But yeah, I was so clueless as to any of that stuff that would be happening in the military. Did you maintain any connections with anybody from boot camp? Did you make close friends and did you keep in touch?
So one of the guys that I went to basic training with actually went with me to England. But yeah, we can just save that for the next section, the
Okay.
next
We'll get
part
into
of
that. But as far as like boot camp sisters, we'll say, did you have
no.
any that you were close with and you, okay. Sometimes it's like that.
Mhm.
So tell me, you went to school then, right? What did you train for your career?
So I went in open general. Like I got a really good score on the ASVAB to where I could have
Mhm.
gone medical. And actually, respiratory therapy is one of the jobs I was trying to go to school for. That was what I was looking into getting into. But they said I would have had to wait a year to year and a half for the job opening. And I just wanted to get out the house because I wanted freedom and financial independence and all that. So they're like, okay, well, your only jobs are to be a cop or services. And I was like, well, what does services consist of? And they said, oh, that's cool. Like, they talked it up. You can work in the gym, you rotate, and then you can work in the kitchen and then the hotel and mortuary. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. I would get a lot of experience and I could just rotate. I could try that. So I joined services, open general.
So I had another friend, a guy friend, that the same thing. He was having issues with drugs and he needed to get away from home. And so he joined the Air Force and he really wanted to go special forces, but they didn't have anything available and nothing was going to be open for over a year.
Yeah.
And so he took whatever is available. And they were like, well, we need bodies in statistical analysis. And
Mhm.
so he went into that field. He's just fine. I need to get out of here because if I don't, it's a bad drug environment. I need to get away from it. And
Mhm.
he went in and it was a nightmare. It was a legit nightmare. He ended up getting out of the military early.
He went in services, you said?
Not services, but he went into statistical analysis, which
Oh.
was definitely desk work, analyzing math. He's not great at math. Like it was just not a
Mhm.
good fit. You know what I mean? They
Yeah,
just put
yeah.
a body somewhere and it wasn't the best body for the job, put it that way.
Yeah.
And so he was so stressed out and so miserable and so unhappy in that job that he ended up getting out of the military early
Mhm.
because of it. It just was not a good fit for him, unfortunately. And I met him way later in life, right? And he was telling me the story and he was like, it's so sad because had I just gone into a different field, I probably would have retired from the military. Talking up services for you and you not getting a job that maybe you were really, really interested and really, really would have wanted definitely changed the whole trajectory of your military career.
Yeah, for sure. And then I feel like going through stuff that I went through, it kind of hindered my ability to have job promotion. Like I definitely should have been staff, but the whole thing with EPRs, I feel like I got screwed, because you have to have a top EPR and that adds points to your test for staff. And I only missed it by 30 points, which would have been, the top EPR score. And I got one score lower for no reason other than I was just being hazed, basically. So, yeah, that kind of sucked. But at the same time, I kind of told myself if I made it, then I would try to retrain. And I was already in the process of trying to, but I just kept hitting and getting hit with all these roadblocks, to even retrain. So, At this point, I mean, I had my son and then I was pregnant with my daughter. So then I extended a year because I signed up for 6 years. But
Mhm.
because I was pregnant with her, I want to get a plan and figure out what I'm going to do. I don't want to just get out. So yeah, I was like, if I don't make it, then I'll just get out and I'll just use my GI Bill. But yeah, I thought about even like the public affairs because I really like to write, something like that. I even tried to be the flight attendant. There's opportunity where you can do that. At one point, they were letting a lot of people get out and it was some force reduction thing and you could palace chase and go reserve. So I tried doing that. But then they just kept slamming me into, oh, mental health, oh, this, that, all these things that I felt like were just thrown on me. And then it kind of just screwed my chances.
It's interesting. So I'm going to back up and go back because I want to hear about England and I want to hear what led to you being in this situation where you feel like all of these roadblocks were into your place. But before I do, I want to say that I hear all kinds of stories on this podcast, right? And one of them kind of blew me away. There's actually a handful of them where it seems every door is open for this person. It's usually someone who has retired at 23 years, 20 years in the military. And I'm listening to their story and I'm thinking, what a beautiful military experience. I had no idea it could be that amazing. Had
Yeah.
I had this career counselor who sat and said, "Hey, this is what your options are. Let me help you. This is what you need to do." Like a good mentor, a good leader, or a good career counselor that helps you navigate your military career and get you to where it works for you. I mean, there's people who have gotten all the way up to their PhD, didn't pay a dime for it because the military paid for it, got into the best jobs, went to the best places, had this wonderful leadership in place that actually nurtured and helped their career. And it's so incredible to think that that happens. But the majority of the people that I speak to don't even know that those things are possible and could exist. And I know that I didn't firsthand. So it's interesting to me that you felt that you were met with obstacles instead of support. So I want to go back and talk about what it was like for you when you got to England.
Well, I mean, for one, it was a different country, so that was cool. So I spent most of my time in England working in the kitchen, in the gym, and a little bit in the hotel. But like when I got there, I started working in the kitchen and I worked with British contractors, people from Poland, people from Sweden, kind of people from all over. So that was neat, learning different cultures and all that. But I will say that the UK is different. They drink. Like one thing that they say is, I was bloody pissed last night. And I'm like, why are all these people so angry? And then I realized that pissed in England means you're drunk. So why don't they just have a drinking problem? So I think that didn't help with the military drinking culture. Yeah, they just stay drink. When you're 16, you can drink with your parents, like at a pub. So that was crazy. And then you can drink overseas when you're 18. So I was 19 and I was over there and I was able to drink. And it was like my first time drinking too. So I didn't really understand all the rules to drinking, about mixing alcohols and all these things. So, I would get blackout drunk. And I think that's why the military would put this anytime you would have an alcohol related incident, they put you in ADAP, which is like Alcohol Anonymous. But I don't feel it was right that they're punishing people that are so young. A lot of us were sheltered, and that was like our first time drinking. You know what I mean? You're technically underage still, but it's legal out there. So it wasn't like I was purposely trying to get black. I didn't know the rules, so I would just accept drinks from people. And then there was a huge issue with party drugs too. So just getting drugged. And so I know for sure I've been drugged like on multiple different occasions, but I didn't realize that until I came to the US. Because then I remember feeling alcohol and then being like, why is the floor not coming up, to my eyes? Like, why do I not feel so out of it? And they're just like, huh? And then I connected the dots that most of the time I would be drinking out there, I was getting drugged. It wasn't the same. It was MDMA. MDMA is really big out there. It's like ecstasy, but it disappears in 8 hours from your system. So that was the easiest thing people would use to drug you and, and ketamine and all that. But I remember I would see it in the security forces. I would see it outside the ground. So it gets to a point where you're like, who can you even trust? Are the cops carrying it too? There's a little
Straight
smiley face
up.
pills on the ground. Yeah. So that was pretty crazy because I partied a lot because it was my first time, like everybody, I just wanted to get out there. I really just like to dance. It wasn't like I wanted to just drink and get drunk. I would just have a couple of drinks and I just loved to be out there dancing. Like it was fun back then. It wasn't like it is now where people are scared to even go out. It was a whole different world. Everybody just dresses up for no reason, and so I would just want to be out dancing. But yeah, I definitely don't think I knew what I was getting into until the first couple of times I realized I was actually drugged, you know? So that's one thing I feel wasn't fair that they did as far as the military is anytime you go through something that's an alcohol related incident, they just put you in ADAP. So I feel like I was in that most of my career, for like speaking up about things. They're like, oh, were you drinking? Oh, ADAPs. And then they just kind of label you as some kind of alcoholic slut. I don't really think they're helping people that even go through things, or they don't realize like a lot of military people were actually using alcohol to cope through shit that they were going through. And so I just seen like a lot of people not get help for the things that they went through, and they would turn to alcohol because, weed's not legal, even though I feel like that's a lot less of a risk than that all the alcohol incidences. So in England, you could drink in the dorms. So that was different from Travis. Travis, that was my second base. That was out here in California. You can't drink in the dorms. So it was dry dorms. So trying to compare the two, when you're over in England and you can drink in the dorms, it limits the drunk driving off base and stuff. But with Travis, they had a big issue with drunk driving because, you can't drink in the dorms. People go off base and all the alcohol incidences would happen either in base housing or off base. So, I mean, that was the difference, I'd say.
Wow, that is okay. I'm processing. I'm processing. What I'm tripping on the most, because there's a lot that you said there, is that okay, first I'm gonna say, when I was in the Navy, I was just like you. It was the mid-90s, setting the
Mhm.
scene. It was the mid-90s. I was a 19, 20-year-old girl, okay? I was in one of the best cities in the United States, Chicago, and the underground rave scene there was second to none. And I had a blast, honey, going. And when NCIS was questioning me, that's a story for another day. But I'll tell you this brief bit. What I told them about why I was at those parties was just this. I loved dancing. I loved to get
Yeah,
dressed up. I loved to
yeah.
go dance. It wasn't about anything else. It wasn't about the drugs. It wasn't about anything else other than the music, the dancing, the vibe, and the energy. Yes,
Mhm.
there were drugs there, obvi, but it doesn't mean that I had to necessarily partake in them. But the
Right.
thing is, actually, because we're hospital corpsmen and we swore an oath, we actually helped so many of those kids. But that's another story for another day. But I lived a lot of harassment, we'll say. And when they are kind of spreading bad rumors about you and they're trying to ruin your reputation, we'll just say. I can't think of the word
Mhm.
at the moment. So I experienced that a lot
Pays
while I
like
was
retaliation.
there was some retaliation, but not for that. It's because I testified for someone that was sort of the enemy of the state in a way. And I got him out of trouble by testifying for him in a case at a court martial, and he was found innocent. And then it was sort of like guilt by association where I was targeted by proxy almost because I helped him. So it's a long story. I promise I'll tell that story one day, but I do understand what you're saying, where you're coming
Mhm.
from, especially saying that. And then going back to the 1990s, I don't know if it's still popular now because I'm not in that scene, but there was something called GHB. And that was what they used to put in the drinks. So ecstasy was rather new at the time, new popularity, I'll say. But and I know that MDMA is in that and Molly and all of that stuff, but what we were worried about was GHB getting put into our drinks and like
Mhm.
roofies, right?
Yeah.
So to me, it's really incredible, but not in a good way, that you were drinking there and then you get hearing you're drinking. You're like, how come I'm not so messed up? How come I'm not feeling so weird and loopy and things are, and then you're like, oh my God, I've been being drunk. Like I'm used to being drugged. That's like mind blowing for me,
Yeah.
that making that connection. Drinking here is different than drinking there. Oh my God, I've been being drugged all this whole time when I'm drinking over there.
Hmm.
That's just chilling to me to think. As a woman, especially because of all the dangers that exist for us sober.
Right.
Not to mention then, okay, we're 19, we're 20 years old,
Hmm.
we're prey, right? We
Yeah.
just came from our parents' house. We're independent for the first time in our lives. We're on our own. I had my first apartment at 20, my first car, right?
Hmm.
And I lived alone. You know what I mean? I mean, my
Yeah,
friends
we
were
think
there a
we're
lot.
so grown. Yeah.
Exactly, right? But you're a prey. If you're not
Yeah.
if you're not aware, if you're naive like I was, which sounds like you
Hmm.
were,
Hmm.
you're prey for any predator out there that
Yeah.
sees you just a cute young girl out trying to have fun, trying to dance and drinking, you
Hmm.
know? And then there's the flip side of that where there's no education about that. Asaya, another episode that I did, she goes by Soljana on Instagram if you want to follow her. But when she came to the Female Veterans podcast, she was a Marine and we talked about this. And I always bring her up because she's just so special to me, that episode. And she talked about getting caught up underage drinking. And I told her for the first time in public my story of underage drinking in the military. I didn't get caught up, thankfully, but I was doing it. And I tried to help her, and I hope I did help her on that episode because of the deep guilt and shame she felt because of how she was persecuted for that and how
Hmm.
her career was destroyed and how she was labeled slander.
Yeah.
That's it. That's
Oh
the word
yeah.
I was thinking of. She was
Hmm.
slanderized and treated like a dirtbag for the rest of her career, unable to have a successful career or make a comeback from that mistake, right? It affected the whole rest of her life until she came on the podcast. And now you should see her now. So it always makes me think of that, of how this is a big drinking culture. And any branch I talk to, it's a big drinking culture. And if you fall into that because you're young and you're naive, you start doing that, the things that happen once you get caught up from the military and how they
Yeah.
don't really help you.
It's almost like it's mandatory that you're in the culture. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's at every single event. So unless you're pregnant, there's like no reason why you're not drinking. You know what I mean? You're
it is
damned if
part
you
of
do,
the
you're damned
culture.
if you don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then they like punish you when you go through stuff where you're just like, wait, why are you not helping me? I went through something traumatic. And then they're just like, well, you drank too much. You should, this, it's just all the blame goes back to why were you drinking?
Well, it's the same victim shaming story, right? Well, if you
Yeah.
weren't out at the club, it wouldn't have happened. If you didn't wear a short skirt, it wouldn't have happened. If you weren't a woman, it was, you know what I mean? It's like
Right.
the whole thing of kind of blaming the victim and
Hmm.
so to speak. Okay, well, we're going to take this kid, we're going to, put her in an environment where it is woven into the culture to drink for the most part more than it's not. It's completely socially acceptable. It's even encouraged, right? Because there are
Hmm.
times like if you, and I know there's some people who know this too, if you want to be socially accepted and everybody's going to the bar, you go to the bar. You know what I mean? And some units it's like that. So, and then if you don't do as the Romans do, so to speak, you're kind of ostracized and then you have a completely different and miserable experience. So, it's such a big part of the culture in every single branch.
Hmm.
Yet, when problems arise, you're left swinging, right?
Yeah, exactly. Hmm.
Yeah. So, anyways, okay, so that's what it was like in England.
There's a lot. There's a lot more. So,
Okay,
okay. So the
do
drinking
tell,
part.
girl.
Okay. So the Bayes Club, it was pretty cool. It was cool until it wasn't cool. You know, it was the place to be. It was called the Liberty Club. You know, so everybody would go. So I remember it was after they had, you know, soccer's big out there. They call it football. So it was this big thing, like that game was on. And so the Brits, they all went to pregame, like I said, during the day. And then they all bring it back to the Liberty Club. And so we all went and we were with the British people and all that. And I was so trusting that I put my drink down. But I remember when I went back to go grab it, I was like, which one's mine? And this guy was laughing and he was pointing and he said something about MDMA. And that was the first time I even heard that word. And I was like, what is he talking about? But okay, whatever. I don't know. I trusted them. I'm just like, I'll put my drink down. Everybody was just putting their drinks down, you know what I mean? And like going out and dancing. So I picked it up. And then that's where I started to feel really out of it. And so that was my first time I remember that feeling. And so I ended up leaving my phone. And how I even got home, I think, oh yeah, no, I remember. Okay. So one of my close guy friends walked me home to my dorm room. And basically, I just remember feeling, I remember I didn't have my phone, but I was just so out of it. I was like, I just need to lay down. So I just remember laying down and I seen the ceiling fan spinning. And I was like, man, I'm so messed up right now. I didn't understand what was happening. But anyways, so then what had happened was I left my phone at the club. And then I guess as a joke, that same guy that I considered like a really, really close friend. So the guy that I was stationed with in basic training, that I was stationed with in England, he's the one, it was like this weird thing where that guy had texts from my cell phone to the other guy that I wanted him to come to my room, basically, and hook up. So he used my phone to do that. So the guy that I was in basic training with came to my room to give me my phone. It was like, it almost seemed like a setup. It was bizarre. But anyways, I was so messed up, whatever. I got my phone and he was like, are you okay? And I just kept saying, I don't feel good. And so I just laid down. And then that's the first sexual assault, I guess, like I went through, because he just got on the bed. And like, I was just so messed up. I was just going in and out of consciousness. And I just remember feeling things and looking at the clock and being like, it was hours. And I'm just, what is happening? And then I just remember like finishing on the carpet and then going under my like cabinet and getting out hydrogen peroxide and trying to clean up the rug. And I was like, what is going on? And then the next morning, just finding blood and pubic hair. And that's when I realized what had happened. And I told the guy that I was dating at the time, and he told me I should report it. And so I did. And then I did the exam and all that. And then that's when the base retaliation, all that stuff was going on, because it was somebody in my squadron, you know? So of course, everybody's going to like side with the dude. And then I'm labeled to be like this slut and all this stuff. So that was that first incident of that. Yeah, so that was hard. I ended up having to move dorm rooms. It's so weird to me too. The medical people seem to get treated way better, including like the way their dorm rooms were. Mine was like the Motel 6 services and all the other jobs. Unless you're medical, you're in the Motel 6 dorms. I remember having some guys, like my window was open, squirt me while I was sleeping with a water gun. That's the kind of harassment I was going through. Just crap. So they moved my dorm room to the medical squadron. So I was there with 3 other girls. So it was like us 4, but there was like a secure door on the outside and then you go in and then there's more secure doors. But they gave me like the jankiest room that you could easily break into. So while I was there was this girl that I started noticing my stuff was in her room, and I finally called her out on it, you know, with some of my friends. And I was like, I'm going to go to the first shirt if you don't give me my stuff. So, you know, and, you know, of course they all talk smack too. And I just remember them being outside my room talking shit about me. And I'm like on the other side of the door. I can hear all that. You know what I mean? And I think in my mind, I wanted to just forget about all that. So I'm like, well, they're just going to call me a slut. I might as well be one. And I think I kind of used promiscuity in a way to try and heal in a weird way, you know, but safely using condoms and stuff. But I think I just was like, well, I'm just going to sleep around then. You know what I mean? So yeah, I was just like, well, they're going to call me that. Might as well. And so, but it was kind of empowering in a weird way, because I wouldn't get attached. I would just be like, next, you know what I mean? And then I remember there were a couple of close guy friends that I had that I feel like helped me, but they also broke my heart too. So I went through this breakup with this guy and I was really close with him. And so I ended up just saying, okay, well, I want to just go to London and just, you know, it was my days off. And I had done a modeling portfolio. This was my 19-year-old mind. I was like, you know what? I know there's Ford modeling agency out there. I'm just going to get connected and maybe I can just get out the military early somehow and become a model in London. all sorts of like just messed up. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. But I had left my phone in a cab. I still was trying to get a cell phone, but I was like, oh, it's fine. I'm on my off days. I'll just figure out the phone thing later. The military is not going to bother me. I'm on my days off, right? But like, you're supposed to have a phone on you at all times. And I'm just going to take a risk. I'm going to go to London. I just need to get away. You know what I mean? And there were like those phones in London, were the pay phones. So I knew I could like just call people on those. I was like, it's fine. But then I got stuck in the riots of 2011, the riots in London.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I was in London by myself as a female, no phone, stuck in riots.
Oh my God. The worst.
But I actually found, I was going through my room just trying to refresh my memory stuff, but I actually have the paper and I like framed it. Yeah. So it was basically where, you know, the whole police brutality stuff that happened out here in 2020 in the rioting, that all happened in England in 2011. It was, I don't want to mess up his name, but here, let me. It was Mark Dunham. Anyways, so it was this whole controversy where he was basically labeled as this gangster that was just, you know, a terrible dude, and they were banned in England. So the thing is, he had a gun on him, and I don't even think he wasn't really even doing anything wrong. It was just the fact that he had a reputation in London. It was North London too, so it was the rougher part of London. So basically what had happened is the police ended up framing him and saying that he shot at them just because he had a gun on him. But they ended up finding out later that the police framed it. So it was a police bullet lodged in the police's vest. But what ended up causing all the riots, I just recently realized this too, because there's just so much talk about what actually caused it. There were rumors that, oh, it's just the 16-year-olds. Because at 16, you're able to like work and all that. So they're like, oh, they're just rioting, being bad kids. They're mad about their pay and all this stupid stuff. But I knew it was deeper. So I was like researching about it, and I didn't realize that what started it was there was this girl. Well, actually, I was reading the paper. So there was this girl, and she was his friend. So she had thrown a champagne bottle because she was so upset about everything. Like, they killed this man, and he had a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old and a baby, and the woman that he was with, you know, so like that destroyed like his whole family, you know? And so she threw a champagne bottle, kind of like she's tired, you know what I mean? And they were just trying to cover it up. And the police tackled her to the ground and left her bloody with traumatic brain injury, all kinds of crazy stuff. So that's what initially caused the rioting. And so, yeah, I was stuck out there for 3 days because I went out there and I tried to get on the train, but it wasn't running. So I thought initially military, you know, oh my God, is it a bomb? You know what I mean? Because the terrorist threat was a B, C low. It wasn't the best, but you're always supposed to be on alert. I mean, it wasn't the worst either, but I just figured London, I'm like, oh my God, is this a terrorist attack? Is that why they're stopping the trains? Shit, like I don't have my phone, but I feel like I encountered some angels out there somehow. It was crazy. So that happened. I got off the train. I ended up going into like a pub because I was trying to figure out what was going on. But I just remember trying to ask like around for a phone. Nobody wanted to let me borrow a phone, but it was because they were using the phones to do these mass texting to try and coordinate like where to meet up, you know, and like they just didn't want to give me, they don't really like Americans too much out there. But I did a DNA thing. I figured I'm 56% British. So I do have that in my blood. Yeah, but they just didn't want to let me use their phone. So I was, okay, This is weird. But I ended up figuring out what was going on. And I encountered another guy that was out there, and he was like, I'm going to stay with you. I will help you. We'll figure this out or whatever. So yeah, I ended up sleeping at the train station, and he stayed with me until the next morning. And then it still wasn't running. And so I was, well, shit, what am I going to do now? So I ended up kind of just bus hopping. I kept just getting on the buses and trying to see how far I could go to see if I could get to another train, because I was 2 hours from base. You know, you can't miss work or you're AWOL, right? So I ended up having to like stay at a Marriott the whole time. Everything's being burned around me. Buses are on fire. They're lighting the city up. Everything's. And so I just realized that maybe that contributed to me now having severe asthma, plus, you know, pneumonia, bronchitis, COVID. because I was breathing in the burning city. And I don't know why I didn't connect those dots. And then also, just the chemicals of working around food, being put on the grill all the time in the kitchen, the carcinogens. So I ended up staying at a Marriott. I got in contact with my supervisor and he was like, they're trying to say you're AWOL because you didn't report to duty. You need to be here by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm like, I don't know how to get back. I've tried everything. Not even taxi drivers could drive me to base. It was so difficult. So I finally found this Polish guy, could barely speak English, and I paid him $600, which was a lot back then. Now for a 2-hour trip back to base, I'd be paying probably over $1,000. But I paid $600 just to get back to base. It was another $600 for the Marriott. There were no hostels. People were leaving their houses, trying to stay in hostels because people's houses were getting broken. It was just chaos everywhere. So I ended up getting a taxi ride back to base. When I came back, I told them I was going to come back or whatever. I was met by this guy who I was working at the fitness center with, and he told me I had to report to the gym and that the cops would be coming. I was just like, what? You call the cop? In my mind, I'm safe. But no, I was being punished. So I get there, right? And I'm being told I'm going to be arrested. So I'm like, okay, well, I have to go to the bathroom. And I was just so angry. I punched the gym wall out of anger, not thinking it's concrete, it's going to break my hand, right? I just was so mad. And then I came out and then they arrested me and I'm just bawling because I can't believe I'm being punished. The whole time I was in fear out there. Oh, I also almost walked into a prostitution ring in Piccadilly Circle, but I had another guy out there who said, oh no, because they call them models out there, right? And there's a fried chicken place and a laundromat. And then there's this basement and a lime green sign and it said, models, £2.50. And I was like, modeling, what? And so I didn't freaking know. I started walking over and this guy pulls me away. He's like, oh no, honey, that's not the kind of modeling you want to get into. And I was like, what? And then I saw these girls come out and they were prostitutes.
Oh.
So yeah, London I was in a bad area too. So I was just so happy to be safe and be back. And the fact that I was just being punished, it wasn't even right.
Cops, though? That seems excessive.
I got arrested and then I had to get to the station. I was being questioned. I got drug tests, all these things. I was some criminal
you were in the riot
duty. Yeah, and I couldn't get back to base. I missed a day of work.
No, but I mean, did they think, oh, you were down in the riot, so now we have to use all this excessive force? Or it was just because you went AWOL?
Because I went AWOL is what I was told.
How long were you AWOL? A day?
Yeah, a day and a half. I was on my off day. So I had my 2 off days and I missed a day of work. And then I came back. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So yeah, all that stuff happened.
Being arrested still seems excessive.
Well, when I was at the station, I kept picking up the pen and dropping it because my right hand was broken. I just didn't know it yet. And the guy was like, why do you keep picking up the pen and dropping it? And I was like, my hand hurts. He's like, why does your hand hurt? I said, I punched a wall. And then he asked my supervisor, were you aware of this? When this happened? And I was just like, I went to the bathroom and my supervisor, he was just like, no, I didn't. And they made me wait until the next morning at 7 a.m. to go get it taken care of, go to the ER.
So you had a broken hand for a whole day?
I got back that night. I had to wait it out just in pain. And then I had to go to get taken care of. And then they also made it seem like I was harming government property. I harmed myself. And yeah. So it was a whole thing too. But anyways, that was a lot. So I requested to take leave. And I feel like they probably contacted my parents, but I still... it was this whole thing with my mom. I just remember feeling so angry because I think I felt like I disappointed them somehow, but they didn't understand everything that I was going through. And my mom's kind of reaction was, you're just kind of here, you're trying to just escape your responsibilities, this and that. And I'm just like, you don't understand what I've been going through. It was this whole thing. And I think I was upset because I feel like I wasn't prepared for what I was getting into, but also I know they weren't to blame. And I just feel like my parents, it's hard because I don't think they were really raised to be emotionally available. So I feel like I'm kind of trying to break some generational curses. We butted heads a lot. I was supposed to be on leave for at least 2 weeks, but I ended it early by a week. So I know that kind of really hurt my mom, but I don't know. I had to just go back. So yeah, that was hard. That was crazy.
Wow. Okay. So that is a lot.
It gets better. It gets better. So I get back to base, right? I'm on base restriction for 2 months and I had my pay reduced. So I went from an A1C to an airman. So it's just like kind of a slap in the face when I left on a humanitarian mission, because there was another time where I had lost my wallet. I had gone out dancing again, and I got my wallet stolen. So I couldn't get my room key to my dorm. And I had told my supervisor, please don't blow this up. I'm going to be there at 7 a.m. I have to get my dorm key. But I worked at 4 a.m. shifts. But I wasn't like drunk. I literally just wanted to go out dancing because I was so stressed out, right? I had a drink. So I was totally fine to work. I'm going to be to work as soon as I can. I just need to get my dorm key. So I stayed in one of my friend's rooms. And of course, what happens? Somehow the first sergeant and another female worker that they came, and I was in the shower, and I remember him coming to my room, and I opened the door and I'm like, excuse me, I'm in the shower. Can you give me a minute? I remember saying that, and he still opened the door, and I was like, I'm in the shower, stuff like that. So I remember he wrote me up because he tried to say dereliction of duty or something, even though I was like, I notified the proper chain of command of what had happened. Why am I? And so, of course, once again, all the drug tests, urine tests, try to make me out like I'm some crazy partier, nothing in my system. And it was just frustrating because I would rebuttal stuff. And I remember I rebutted that and I wrote out what he did. And he's like, this isn't going in your file. And he ripped up my rebuttal. And I'm just like, wow, I can't even, because he was just a shitty first sergeant. So, you feel like you have enemies. And I remember telling him, what, it's fine. One day I'm just going to write a book about this if you just want to keep treating me like this. And he was like, that's not very funny, Airman, right? And I was like, I'm serious. And like, here it is, So I talked about it. I just didn't like name his name, but I don't know. I'm just like, you can't keep messing with people like that. Even the doctors on base and just the shit that you go through. You can't really get appointments easy when you're in the military. So I would have to go to the ER when I would have emergencies. And I had a lot of medical emergencies. But then I would get written up constantly for going to the ER. You know what I'm saying? Oh, Ashton knows that she needs to use the proper reporting of going, how do they word it? Basically, I'm supposed to be making medical appointments. Like I would get in trouble for going to the ER. I remember one time I had a miscarriage. Like I didn't even know I was pregnant. It was like one of those situations where, you switch birth controls and you're supposed to use a backup in between. Well, I didn't. And it was like 8 weeks, but I just had so much pelvic pain and massive clots. And I went to the ER. And I just remember coming back to bed and same thing. They come back to work. Oh, you need to be making an appointment and da, da, da. So getting written up for stuff like that. And then, having to give them my paperwork, my medical paperwork. So they knew every detail about all the stuff I was going for. It's just super invasive, like HIPAA violations to prove that I wasn't just trying to get out of work.
Oh my God.
Shit like that. Yeah.
I get it. I mean, I remember in 1998, I had a kidney infection and I did have an appointment on Friday, but by Wednesday, my roommate took me to the emergency room and the bacteria had spread to my blood. And I had gone the week before to one of the clinics on the base, and this HM1 had treated me. And he said, oh, well, you have gas, you're fine. And I was telling him, and they gave me an x-ray. He's like, oh, you just have gas. And he gave me a laxative, which, well, if you have a kidney infection, right, a laxative will dehydrate you further. So I didn't take it right away because I felt like, no, this isn't right. It doesn't feel like that. The pain's in my back. I don't understand what. I'm just feeling unwell. And the back pain had just started. I felt like just like a little back cramp or something. It was weird, but it was just starting. Anyway, so he gave me that. I went to the emergency room. I had blood sepsis. I nearly died. I was on the serious list. They called my family. I was in and out of consciousness in the ICU for 3 days. I lost 30 pounds within a week. I was really near death sick. When I came out and I was on the ward, I heard there were rumors going around about me because apparently I had said that the HM1, they said, why did you wait so long? And I said, I didn't. I went last week and I saw this HM1 and he gave me this and he told me that. And I said, he misdiagnosed me, right? He misdiagnosed me. I will tell you in 2016, that kidney had to be removed. by the
Mhm.
way, because it was so badly damaged then. I kept having problems with it until it had to be removed because of that misdiagnosis, I will say,
Mhm.
right? So the rumors going around about me were that I was a bad patient because I was a drug addict. So because I said that he misdiagnosed me, all the rumors, all the slander going around about me was that I was just a drug addict and I was making stuff up.
Wow.
Yeah, so I understand what you're talking about. Of course, I
Mhm.
wasn't a drug addict and I wasn't making stuff up, but I did nearly
Mhm.
die because someone didn't catch something that was serious. They just were
Right.
like, oh, it's just this. Like, you know how they will tell you, just take some Motrin.
Mhm.
Just take some
Yeah.
Motrin for any
Yeah.
little thing. Oh, you broke your hand?
Well, yeah, I remember even when I
Some
was
Motrin.
pregnant having to go back to work with bronchitis. And I'm like, I work with food. Like, I'm pretty sure this isn't healthy.
Yeah.
And even with pregnancy, being pregnant with both my kids, working until you deliver, that was hard. And then with my kind of job, I was on my feet all the time. Like, you're supposed to be getting breaks. You're supposed to be able to eat. You would think you work in the kitchen, right? Yo, you're eating all the time. No, you aren't. I remember being at the taste testing table and like getting yelled at. I was pregnant. You aren't letting me sit down to eat. So I'm at the taste testing table, literally taste testing, and I'm getting yelled at to get back to work. It was crazy.
Wow. So a lot of this happened at your first duty station?
Well, no, I ended up having my kids out was at Travis. So I got out of Travis, out of Lake and Heath. That was a humanitarian mission. So I was there just shy of 2 years. So I came to Travis. It was 2011. It was Thanksgiving time. So I remember my first time I just remember being in the like a little van thing. They picked me up, and the first thing they're talking about is this crazy airman girl, and oh, hopefully you're not like her. And I remember her name was like Airman White, and it was so similar because my name was Wright. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
I mean, I ended up getting married, but I kept the married name because it's my son's last name. So now I have two different names from two different bases. But I was just kind of thinking, like, dang, they're kind of being really mean. I don't know what this girl went through, but like, they're just saying like she had some mental breakdown and ran off
Right.
there. After going through everything I went through in England, I was just already like, oh my God, what is Travis going to be like? But they talked it up. Oh, it's a dry base. There's not really alcohol problems. Yeah, right.
No, there's DUI problems. There's there's a
Yeah,
difference.
and like sexual assault stuff is still rampant, but it was just more, I don't even know how to describe it. It would have been different if I was in a different unit. I don't know. Sometimes I legit do get jealous looking at my female veteran friends that I'm still connected with, like on Instagram and stuff. Cause
Mhm.
I'm like, damn, they had all these positive memories. And, and people are like, thank you for your service. I'm just kind of like, thanks. Cause like, I guess it made me like not feel proud, like
Like,
not
almost like if
worthy of
you
like
only
that.
knew what you know what I mean? If
Yeah.
you knew what
And
was
then,
happening, you wouldn't be
right.
like,
And
"Thank
then
you for your service."
and then kind of people being like, oh, well, you didn't go to combat. From the outside, like I look fine. Like I can hide stuff pretty well. I'm an empath. I'm always the type to be there for other people. But when I would go through stuff, nobody was there for me. So I'm kind of at the point where I'm just used to people leaving. I'm used to romantic relationships ending after 6 months at the most, after going through, marriages and a long relationship with my daughter's dad and stuff like that. But I mean, I kind of just got used to toxic to where now I'm kind of like, I don't really want to deal with any toxic. I will just cut people off. When I got out, it's crazy. Like I remember running into an old supervisor at the bowling alley, and I hadn't seen these two guys in like years from Travis. And I kind of was panicked. And I was with this girl that we're not friends anymore. That was kind of an unhealthy friendship too. But I just remember telling her, I don't know if I can go up to them. And then, they came up to me and he was just, congratulations. And I'm like, for what? And he basically said that everybody just thought I died. Like I blocked everybody. I had to like erase everything from my mind. So it's weird. I'm recovering from surgery right now. And I kind of just had to go through all the boxes in my closet, which I know I'm not supposed to be lifting, but I did that little thing where you put it on your head and then I kind of just threw it on the ground. And then I just went through all the papers and I'm like, damn, I really got fucked. Just reading the things that they were saying about me. And I only have medical records that I was actually given that I requested from 2010 to 2014. They still haven't given me my records from 2014 to 2017, and I'm still fighting to this day to get those. But regardless, as far as filing disability claims, I've just used the documents that I've had to try and prove things that I went through. And then being in the VA now, having since, like you said, my gallbladder removed, I have so much documentation of pelvic pain. They thought I had appendicitis, but they were like, oh, it's like a wait and see. And then my gallbladder was severely inflamed, like disease, all messed up. 2020, had that removed. And then now it's like hysterectomy. Okay, 18 biopsies, multiple leaps. How are you not connecting this back to MST? But you know what I mean? And then also, it's just one of those things. How is HPV not a rating? You know what I mean?
Hmm. Oh my God, that is such a good point.
But it's almost like they make it seem like we did it to ourselves. Oh, well, you're just a slut.
I mean, to hear about your experience in the military is really heartbreaking. And it's a really powerful thing to say that in a weird way, you felt like you were taking control. If someone was going to call you a slut, you would just step into that role and just be this, promiscuous, but like heartbreaker type. And just all of the pain and all of the trauma that you had to have experienced just from that first assault from a friend and a complete you said it's like it was almost like a setup. No, honey, that was a setup. That was a straight up set up. And
Well, and what's
to
crazy
see
is the guy that happened with, though, we were close. So that
yes.
screwed my trust. And then even to this day, I would talk to it and I don't know, we just completely, I did block his number just because I can't keep being trauma bonded to people, but I don't really know how to have relationships unless it's trauma bonding.
Well, honey, there's a lot of therapy and coaching and stuff out there that can help you do that because you deserve better than that. And I get where you're coming from too. That trust being broken like that, it's no wonder why the rest of your time in England was distressed. You know what I mean? Because what
Yeah.
you must have been carrying and going through, and you know how many women don't report? No tea, no shade. Obviously, this is why, though. This is a shining example of why women are so afraid to report and why they don't report, why most women will prefer. I've had many women on this podcast tell me
Yeah.
this is the reason that they didn't report, you know.
Right.
And it takes you years of your life afterwards to try to heal and to
Well,
recover and it affects
and
everything, your friends and
yeah,
everything.
exactly. Yeah. Well, and that was just England. I didn't tell you about Travis yet. So I get to Travis, and I think I was so in love with the idea of love that I ended up, meeting my now ex-husband, and I had gotten pregnant right away. And I don't think he was really ready at the time because we were 21, got married, one of those things. But yeah, I was just like, well, I'm keeping it. And so I ended up having my son. And then it was, let's see, we were married for about 2 years. And then 2014 hit. And that was a crazy year, crazy year. So we ended up going through divorce. I feel like he came into my life for a reason, you know what I mean? And I have to still co-parent with him. And I feel like we've made, it has not been easy, co-parenting, but I feel like we've made progress in just trying to put aside a lot of stuff that happened. But I don't think that he ever really stopped to think about the stuff I was going through while in the military. And I
Mhm.
think going through that on top of becoming a single mom, on top of what I went through, 2014 just kind of broke me. So we were going through a divorce, and it was like Father's Day weekend, 2014. And I get a phone call. So I worked with this guy in the fitness center, and he had just gotten back from deployment. And he was cool. You could tell he had a little bit of issues. They put him on the no weapon list, kind of like the suicide watch, because after his deployment and stuff. But they ended up giving his guns back eventually. They ended up letting him have his weapon again. So, yeah, I just remember he was about to get out of the military. But this is what okay. So I don't want to say all these things. I had some amazing leaders that I encountered and some amazing people that I'm still in contact with, but there was also a lot of bad leadership and people that drove them, I feel like, to the edge. And I don't know what he went through when he deployed, but I just know that they kept fucking with him and they kept threatening to not let him take leave. And he just needed a mental break. And they just kept making him do all these things. And I just remember he told me the night before this whole thing that I'm about to tell you happened, he just said, I swear to God, if they ever call me back into active duty reserve, I'm just going to take a gun and put a bullet to my head. And I was just like, that's nothing to joke about, but he would always joke like that, and I would just kind of be like, okay, I would try and tell him no, but he was also taking the medication that, mental health prescribes. And he was trying to get off of it because he said he couldn't feel any emotion. And I just told him, I don't think you should do that because, the side effects are suicide. And to this day, that's kind of why I'm like against that stuff. I'm all into medicinal, even medical marijuana, which I wasn't really for that. I think until 2020 is when I realized that's what helped my heart actually start functioning better with panic attacks and all that. So I do kind of microdose with that, but that's it. It's just for panic attacks and anxiety. But he couldn't have access to that. He was still active duty. So he was getting off of that. He was talking about quitting it cold turkey and he made that comment. Then the next day, I worked with him that night. And the next day, I knew his girlfriend. I mean, he's my coworker. So the next day I get this call and they basically are asking me if I've heard from him. And I just had this gut feeling. It's like something happened. And I remember telling my ex, something happened. I don't know. I can't shake this feeling. Something bad happened.
Oh.
And he was just like, what do you mean? I'm like, I don't know. And then they kept trying to say they couldn't get a hold of him. And I was like, why are you tripping? It was Father's Day. And they called us all into this meeting. It was the MPF, like we had to go into like the auditorium. It was like our whole force support squadron. We had to go all in there. And they basically told us that he committed suicide. So yeah. And it had happened in a hotel room at 6 a.m. that morning with a gun. So he had shot himself in the head. From there, we had, oh my God, all these meetings and suicide briefings and all this freaking crap. And what made me so irritated is that the military always did that. And I feel like I tried so hard to help change the system, but I was met with all this BS. Like, oh, well, you're not in our shoes. You're not telling us to do it. But I would see the signs of people on the edge, on, the brink of a mental breakdown. There's this other guy that I worked with, and he was putting cough syrup in his drinks at the DFAC. He was so depressed. And I'm like, you need to have eyes on him because I've seen over half of my squadron had been sent to the psych ward, including me. My ex-husband ended up calling, one day we were arguing about tax money. And of course, I had been drinking a margarita. So they come and then boom, another ADAP thing. And then they're monitoring, making it seem like I'm just some alcoholic. And not that I could be going through tons of stress. I had just lost a coworker, was going through a divorce. Oh, and I went through a gang rape. That all happened in 2014.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You can't just drop it in passing like that. That's crazy. What?
Yeah. Okay. So he died. And then after that, my squadron, I think they were trying to just get people together. So there was this party and it was a house party. It was the next month. It was the end of July. So I ended up going with some girlfriends and it's fine. I just stay with my friends because, I know I got to be safe and all that stuff. But it got to a point where everybody just started spreading out and I couldn't find my friends. And I was just like, I need to go. But I just remember my supervisor at the time, whose house it was, told me to just put my stuff in his dresser drawer in the master bedroom so it doesn't get stolen or whatever, because there are tons of people there. Like, okay, well, I'm trying to leave. So I went up there to try and get my stuff. And it was him and then another coworker of mine who kind of just came in and I'm just like, what are you doing? I'm trying to leave. I was trying to call my ride and they threw my phone across the room. And I was just like, what are you doing? And they're like, you're not calling. And then they kind of blocked the door and they're like, you walked into this. You're not getting out of it now.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah. And then I was kind of just thrown on the bed and then, yeah, it kind of just all unfolded from there. And I mean, I was trying to fight it off and then they shut the lights off and then that made it harder. Yeah. And then it was one and then it was another finish, get a towel and then wipe it up. And then the next thing you know, my friend comes out the bathroom and she's like, are you okay? I'm half naked and I'm sitting there and I'm just like, I'm fine. And I'm looking at her, you heard me screaming, you heard me fighting, and you just sat in there. You just stayed in the bathroom, and she was in there with this other dude. But the reason why she didn't come out and she didn't say anything is because she was married to a cop. So she was trying to protect herself because she was cheating on her husband in the bathroom at that party. So, like, there were witnesses, but everybody shut up about it because, you know, these guys, they had a good reputation. So, of course, they're going to all be in their corner. And then I'm painted out to be like, oh, well, this happened in her last space. Oh, she's just a troublemaker. Oh, she was drinking. Oh, all these problems. You know what I mean? So,
Oh my God.
so I didn't want to report it because I knew the retaliation and all that stuff. So after I had my son, I ended up doing kind of like a mommy makeover type thing, and I had breast augmentation. Well, they still were healing, but I had a capsular contracture. So I remember seeing my plastic surgeon, which I'm just now realizing I think he was the one that maybe reported it. That or my ex-husband. I still don't know who reported it. I only told 2 people, but then, you know, hospitals, they're mandated reporters. So because I couldn't tell him that what I went through that probably caused the capsular contractures, you know what I mean? But he was questioning it, you know?
Oh
So
my
anyways,
God.
yeah. So basically, I had my first sergeant call me in a week later and say somebody reported it. And then, yeah, I just admitted to what happened. But then they tried to say, oh, well, it's already been a week, so it's too late to do an
Like a
exam.
rape kit?
Yeah, which was a lie because, you know, I'm pretty sure sperm lives. I think I looked it up. It lives in your body for like a month after I would have had it. But it got to the point where everybody's word against mine and everybody was against me. And, you know, even coming down to the actual trial, it was almost turning into like an entertainment thing. Like the whole base was going to be able to just openly watch, and I was just going to be mocked and made out to be this terrible person. And basically, I was told if I sign an NDA, and to just not say anything, that they'll be administratively discharged and all this crap that never ended up happening. One of them got this great GS position, and the another, I mean, just went off, and they both, it was around the time they were both getting out, yeah, anyways. So they ended up just living a normal life. And that whole time, one of them was married, and then I was being stalked by the wife for years after, even to the point where my daughter's dad was getting somehow texts from her.
My God.
It got dropped. Nothing happened. So why are you still hung up on wanting to talk to me, you know? And being stalked by her and then trying to say I don't feel safe. Even when I was pregnant with my daughter, this guy tried to break into my house on base. I was 9 months pregnant. It happened on 9/11. 9 months pregnant with my daughter by myself, base housing. It takes the cops 30 minutes to come to my house. And the first thing they say is there anyone who would maybe be out to get you? And I was so irritated. I looked at his rank and I said, I understand that you're just in training, you know, since you're new to the Air Force. I could tell by your rank, but I'm going to need you to do a better job. Because the guy said to me, oh man, I saw a guy that matched the description of what you're saying. Because I saw the guy trying to break into my house. I was upstairs and I looked down because I heard, first of all, this happens when I was pregnant, and I got super intuitive when I was pregnant, but I also couldn't sleep. And I think that saved me with a lot of instances because it happened at 4 a.m. I worked in the kitchen. So I hung out of the kitchen. I'm just snacking, midnight snacking, talking to my coworkers, the cool ones that I like. And then I ended up going back. So it was 4 a.m. and I heard a squeaking, and he was undoing my light bulb outside to try and make it dark in my backyard. He came
Oh
in
my
through the gate.
God.
Yeah. And I wanted to be sarcastic and be like, do you just need a light bulb or something? And then I realized, oh shit, this guy's trying to break in my house. What the fuck am I going to do? And also, I was in the shittiest base housing. It was by the front gate. The locks didn't work in my bedroom. Everything was just broken. It was just crap. So I definitely felt scared. I called the cops. I'm on the phone with them for 30 minutes. I don't know why it took them that long. And just to be told that they saw a guy match the description, but they saw him get away in a white pickup truck, it made me so mad. I
They
literally,
watched him get away. Oh
yeah,
my
I was
God.
so
They
mad.
saw
So,
him. They saw how
right.
he got away. They didn't chase him. They
Yeah.
didn't do anything. They just
And
watched.
yeah, so then after that, I ended up moving an hour away, you know, to where I'm currently living. and they put my address on the recall roster, and I was so upset. Literally, why can't just the commander and first year have it? Because I feel like there are people out to get me. They don't need to have my address. I was going to be getting out in a couple of months, safety reasons. And, we had a suicide problem in the squadron and all this crap. So I was like, what the hell ever. And so my parents got me a Ring camera. And so, I have that, I have dogs. And I just have to watch my back all the time. You know what I mean? But back to the whole suicide thing with the last guy, that was 2014. And then all that was happening within 11 months after that in 2015. I had been notified that we lost another one. But this guy was the first guy that I had really kind of connected. He was cool. Like, he was a cool dude when I first got to Travis. And we kind of had a thing, but then I didn't know he was married and they were having problems. All this stuff came out later, but I was so young and dumb. And so then when I found that out, I was like, oh, obviously I'm not really going to talk, but we were still friends. And then I kind of just stayed away because I didn't want to get in trouble, he's married. So he ends up going through divorce and then getting back with this girl that he ended up dating before the woman that he married. Yeah. So he ended up going out to where she lives because they both got out around the same time. They had deployed together. They had a lot of history. So he went out to Wisconsin. And then this is actually a news article already because he ended up, I think he had a mental breakdown too, but he took some guns. He was drinking, first of all. He was way over the legal limit. But he loaded up his backpack with a bunch of guns and he rode his bike. Oh, this is hard because it's so like May and June. So this happened in May. It actually happened May 4th. So, it's right around this time. But he loaded his backpack up with guns and he rode across the Manassa Bridge and he took out a whole family and then he shot himself. So that was a lot. Yeah.
Oh my God. I'm stunned. So this guy that you knew, you were in the military with, he killed a random family and then killed himself, or his own family?
No. What's crazy is the family that he took out kind of resembled his fiance. Kind of looks like the fiance. And the thing is, when these things happen, I don't know how to cope other than trying to be there for other people. So with the first one, I was close. I knew the girlfriend. So I was just trying to be strong for her. And then with him, again, like I was close to the fiance. So I met up with her and I was trying to be there for her. And I got approved to go to the funeral. Nobody else went, and I was trying to be supportive. But then when it came to my own healing, it kind of like smacked me in the face when I realized, because I tried to be there for her, but it was just hard because I remember it was from Orange County and it was my first time driving that far by myself, mentally messed up too. And I just remember I couldn't sleep. And I remember telling her, I'm going through my own stuff. I'm going to try to be as supportive as I can. And then, she was like so mean. She just was like, why are you trying to make this about you and this and that? And then, of course, somehow that gets leaked back to my upper leadership. And then the next thing you know, I'm being admitted to mental health. Like I have all these problems and I'm just, bro, oh my God, it was just crazy. Because I just feel, and I've even brought this up to my leadership, instead of making it out to be everybody has just some mental head case, why don't you work on just being better leaders? Maybe these things won't keep happening. You know what I mean?
A good point.
Even the psychologist that I spoke to was just kind of like, you don't have any problems. You're just under a lot of stress. You've been through a lot. And he was like, to be honest with you, 3/4 of your entire squadron has already been to mental health and been on the 72-hour hold.
What is going on at that squadron? Obviously, something's not right.
Right.
And numbers don't lie.
Yeah. And that's exactly what my parents, I had told my mom and she's like, oh my God, what's going on with your squadron? I also didn't tell them what I was going through, but aside from they knew I was going through divorce, but I don't know. Cause I just feel like my parents are the type where, why would you put yourself in that position? You know what I mean? So I just didn't even find all these things and it was just a lot. So yeah, that was difficult and trying to be there. So I spent a lot of time in the city where I'm at now. And I would just kind of come out here. Same thing. I just wanted to get away and dance. So I would just go out to the club and I wouldn't drink. I would just be out because I'm like, well, I'm going to drive back. I just want to go meet new people. So I would do that. That's how I met my daughter's dad. And I feel like I was just trauma bonded to him. And it wasn't the healthiest situation. Obviously, we're not together for a reason. But I just feel like I was trauma bonded and I got pregnant. But I almost think now in hindsight, Like maybe getting pregnant with my daughter kind of in a way saved me because they were trying to make me out. I feel like seeing all these stories about these women being deemed as suicidal, they were trying to do the same thing to me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
If it wasn't for being pregnant, who's to say they weren't gonna, oh, she was suicidal. They kept pushing for that, kept saying I was suicidal. And I'm just like, I'm not. They kept, doing it. And
That is weird.
I literally remember seeing this guy with a suitcase trying to walk into my garage. And I'm like, what the hell is in a suitcase? Are they guns? And I just remember shutting my garage door so freaking fast. But, I would bring stuff up and they would just dismiss it. Like it got so bad, even like being stopped. I just remember one time she was sitting outside my house and I just got in the car, pulled out the garage, and I just drove all the way up to where the cops are. And I tried to report it because I didn't know what else to do. And they just were like, well, we talked to her. She said she's not this and that. And they would just take her side. So it just continued the harassment. And then like still having to see the guys. And it just like never stopped to the point where I couldn't deploy because I was going through that stuff. So I really couldn't get away. And then on top of that, I'm going through divorce. I'm already going through custody hearings. And it was just so much that I think once I actually got out, I think that's why I tried to just shut everybody out. And I just wanted a fresh start, just focus on school. But it was hard because now I'm like trying to get my degree and I have a newborn and a toddler. So like that wasn't easy. But I think going through school just kind of made my mind better. I was able to focus on something and kind of put all that out of my mind. You know
Did
what I
you
mean?
finish school now?
Yeah. I have my bachelor's in journalism. And then in 2020, I didn't really know what to do because I knew I'd have to homeschool the kids. And I still was able to use folk rehab. So then I was like, well, I just want to get my cosmetology license. So I went to beauty school in 2020. So I have my cosmetology license. And then I just got certified to be a health and wellness coach just for fun. So, I mean, I do like to just challenge myself and be like, okay, what can I do now? It's funny. I was just telling my son, like, oh, you know what? Maybe I should teach art. And he was kind of like, Mom, you need to calm down. Because I do with my job now, I teach kids. I'm at the YMCA and stuff. And I do it like doing art. My daughter loves art. So I'm trying to grow that in her more. But he was like, Mom, there's people that are Picassos and they're going to look at you. You don't even have any formal training. They're going to like laugh at you, Mom. No, you need to get your credentials. Like,
How old is your son?
oh God, he's an old soul. He just turned 11.
Wow. He's a little bit older than my little guy, but yeah, there's something. They're really something. My oldest one is definitely an old soul too. He just turned 18
Mm-hmm.
on Friday. So I got to tell you, do you know how strong you are? I mean, you're a single mom now. You've been
Mm-hmm.
through all of this. You've
Mm-hmm.
transitioned out of the military. You went back to college with a toddler and a newborn. You've
Yeah.
been spending all this time trying to be there for other people, dealing with all of this stuff. Do you know how strong you are?
I mean, I do, but at the same time, sometimes it just kind of sucks because I feel like when I need somebody, they're just kind of like, oh, you're strong, you're a warrior. And I'm just like, I just need you to be empathetic and listen. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's why they say check on your strong friends,
yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're all
Yeah.
going through something.
I know it's crazy. I feel like the older I get too, I have 6 people alone, not even counting my hair clients that I know that are actively going through battles with cancer. One being as young as 6, and they're all women, little
Oh
girl.
my God.
And then, some that are like my age in their 30s, early 30s, and then women in their 40s. So there's all these things happening to where I'm like, dang, I guess in the military, you kind of think you're invincible. And then you go through all these things and, my parents are out here running marathons and all this stuff now. And I feel like they're in better shape than me. I'm like, what the heck happened? I guess it was all the trauma.
Well, you know what? You are still really young. And I talk to women of all age groups. And I just had a guest on here, Victoria, and she's in her mid 60s. And she's just now feeling like she's through the trauma that occurred in the military and getting over her military experience and healed and reconnected with her family in a healthy way. And it takes time. It takes a lot of therapy. It takes a
Yeah.
lot of, but like with a good therapist, because sometimes it takes a while to get the right therapist for you, and then to
Yeah.
spend that time doing the work on healing yourself and to work through the MST and not just one, but two. I had another guest on the show. I think it was in season 3. She has a not-for-profit placing dogs with veteran owners, right? And she was on the security force. I wanna say it was the Navy or the Air Force. It's been a few seasons, but you can look back and it'll be in the description box of the episode. I think it's season 3 or 4. And she had multiple rapes in the military at different duty stations as well.
Mhm.
And so it's a more common occurrence than people think. And it takes so much work to overcome that. And she chose to stay in. And then she was able to help and protect other women coming behind her, which is so incredible. And it's something that shouldn't happen in the military. We should be safe when we go in there as women. We should be safe, right? But it was just April, and I was just talking on another episode about Vanessa Guillen
Mhm.
and, you know, all of the women that just should have been safe, but weren't safe. And I think when we get out, then we have to spend, if we're lucky, because Vanessa wasn't lucky enough to be able to survive that situation. She didn't have the help at Fort Hood, bad leadership. There's so many years that we have to work through that to the point where we can get to a point where, okay, I'm going to run a marathon, or okay, I'm going to do these other healthy things to like reclaim the part of you that was stolen by these men and by the people and the environments where you were in that treated you the way you did. My friend John, we're not close like we once were, but he was the one who was the target. So imagine if you had like a best friend and everybody was coming down on you, right?
Mhm.
You would be him and I would be that best friend that was always there supporting and trying to help and trying to whatever, and then getting into trouble just because I knew you, right? That was kind of more
Mhm.
my dynamic. But I got to witness firsthand what the full weight of the United States military coming down on you as an individual, as a person in the military looks like. It's hard. It's scary. It affects you. He's affected. He's affected even now to this day. And that's without the assaults, because he has not been assaulted that I am aware of, right? And you have too. So I think that you're really, really strong. I think that you obviously have a lot more healing to do. You're young. You have a lot of time to heal and to change your life into whatever you want it to be. You're
Mhm.
perfectly, you can do it. There's nothing holding you back. You're obviously smart. You're obviously talented and artistic and a great mom in spite of what's happened to you.
Yeah.
And I think, if you do the work and you want to get to that point, you will do it. And every day can be better and better and better for you. Your life does not have to be defined by the monstrous people that have come across your path or what they said about you or what they did to you. You're obviously really strong and you can have any life you want to have because you're strong enough to get it.
Mhm.
You just got to work on the things that need more love, inside. And once you do that, you'll see that you can create the most beautiful life, the happiest life, and you can leave all of that crap in the background, you know?
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I can see your beautiful energy. So I think that you can just create whatever you want. That's cool. And then look at what you're doing already. Health and
Mhm.
wellness. Imagine fusing together your health and wellness into your cosmetology. Being a cosmetologist is
Yeah.
kind of like being a coach, right? Everyone tells you,
Mhm.
you
I'm
talk
like
to
an
your
unpaid
clients,
therapist. Yeah.
right? You're an unpaid therapist already. Now you have the health and wellness. You fuse those two together and you got your own special little niche, right?
Yeah.
So that's cool. I'll do your hair and coach you like at the
Yeah.
same
Well,
time.
actually, one of my clients, same thing, went through like a hysterectomy. She has like lots of same like kind of trauma, but like not a veteran. But she had to go through chemo, like she fought the cancer, but has been having problems with her hair falling out. And, I'm just trying to ask her all these things. Okay, when did chemo end? Oh, a year and a half ago. Okay, it can be the chemo. And then I'm like, okay, well, what shampoo are you using? She's like, Pantene. I'm like, that's your problem. It's advertised, it's so great, but it creates wax coating on your hair. So now I'm gonna have to go get her some good shampoo at the hairstylist stores. You know that you have to be a
Yeah.
hairstylist to get into. But
Yeah.
yeah.
What a beautiful soul. Okay, so I only have 2 more questions for you, and then we're gonna wrap it up. So, you said when you transitioned out of the military, you went back to college and you used voc rehabilitation, but what was the transition like for you? Were you relieved when you got out, or did you actually feel lost?
I think it was kind of like both. I mean, for the longest time, I didn't really feel like I belonged. But then I think what kind of saved me is I went to Sac State and I was majoring in journalism and I became a journalist for the Sac State newspaper. So, like the State Hornet, And so that was pretty cool. I did that pretty much most of my career. Even like the pandemic hit, we were able to do interviews over Zoom and just having that crew and as hard as it is being a journalist as a single mom, I did do it with ABC 10 after college for almost a year. It became too hard with the shifts that he wanted me to work. And then, I kind of turned into an internship because I was paying a sitter like my whole paycheck just to have that job. So I kind of had to let it go. But I mean, I still want to use my degree like different ways, because now I'm like helping kids and I've gotten to teaching and so I kind of want to just use it differently, but I do still feel like there's a disconnect with certain people. But I feel like the more I'm moving in life, I get reconnected. Actually, I did meet another veteran who was at Fort Hood, and she's one of my mom friends. So I got in this group called No Excuse Moms. I don't know if you've heard of about Maria Kang, but she's actually going through her own health battles right now. But I got connected with them. And so just trying to find my groups. And then with my son, got him into martial arts. So it's like we have this little martial arts family. And I think that's kind of helps. Just my son's school, finding my own little group of mom friends. You got to create your own family because my family, they're in Texas and I'm in California. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I always say friends are the family you create for yourself. And if you're lucky, I was lucky in the regard of I had like a family of friends when I was in the military. And I was blessed that they were mostly guys that kept me safe from a lot of situations that could have gone wrong. And
Hmm.
when you were talking about that house party, I was just thinking about how many of those Navy house parties or we throw them in a hotel like that I went to where something like that could have happened. And the whole, again, setup of you, hey, put your stuff in my room. No worries. Like it'll be safe in there. Only thing, your stuff was safe. You were not safe. Right.
Yeah.
Just all of that. And then someone being in the bathroom and either of them could have interrupted that. The cowardice of that galls
Right.
me and just the sickness, it's like all of those people, even the 2 in the bathroom, sick, 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 and how you overcame that, like,
Yeah.
and got to a
Well,
point where you're helping kids and just
yeah. Well,
amazing.
and then even the point of having to sign an NDA and being told by the guy I thought was supposed to be on my side, my lawyer, my military lawyer, his words were, "We don't want another invisible war documentary." And I'm thinking in my head, like, aren't you supposed to
What?
be on my side? Why
Like,
would
that's
you not
gross. We don't want it another oh my god,
another
that's
invisible
so
war?
gross. Okay, which brings me to this question of how did you get to writing the book? Like we know that you have a journalist degree, so obviously you've got talent, but did you just say, "You know what? I said I was going to write a book one day and now I'm doing it?"
Yeah, kind of. I think 2020, I was really trying to heal parts of me. And
Mhm.
my entire military career, I journaled. So I ended up finding all of those journals and I kind of just started putting it together. I kind of made it like my project, but then I also intertwined my transition from the military, going through hard stuff, becoming a single mom, and then even co-parenting. I talked a little bit about that and having to get along with your co-parent and it's just going through that whole struggle and the ups and downs of that. And I don't know, I guess in a way it was like healing. Like I didn't do it because I was like, I'm going to make millions. I haven't really seen much, but to me, it was just therapeutic. And the publishers I went through are actually in London. So to me, it was kind of like, there's like a connection. So yeah, I think it was just therapeutic more than anything. Even though, I knew that there might be some haters that comment, but I know like with my journalism degree how to write to like not be defaming or slandering, but just put my story out there. And then it was crazy because all that stuff started coming out with Vanessa. And now there's like this whole battle cry of women. And would you rather be in the woods with the bear or the man? And I mean, yeah, no, I'd rather be in there with the bear. I mean, I've already been face to face with the bear, nothing's happened. So I'm just like, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, I'm in California. I love bears.
I mean, it's a serious situation, right?
Yeah.
And it's true, sometimes the bear might be safer, a lot of times,
Mhm.
unfortunately, and in the military, especially. So it's just something that we've got to keep putting out there. So I love that you wrote this book. Again, it's called Becoming Her: How to Become a Survivor, but in a different way, because we become survivors because we're in the military, but this is like on a whole nother level. So if you haven't heard of this book, definitely check it out because Ashton really, I think it's amazing that you did this. A lot of women wouldn't report. A lot of women, and there's no shame in that because we see why, but a lot of women go through this. And a lot of women listen to this podcast so that they feel less alone. So just to know that there's another resource out there with great insights and another story for them that they can connect to is amazing. And I'm so happy that you decided to come and share your story on this podcast. I just have one last question for you. What would be your advice to any veteran sisters coming up behind you?
Well, this is kind of easy because I have had younger women that have done their hair and they have told me that they thought about joining the Air Force. And I had already did advise them, like, just have thick skin and know that, be careful with alcohol. It's a drinking culture, but just have a good head on your shoulders and don't think everyone's your friend or your brother and sister. Just kind of have your guard up, and then also if you're gonna do it, wait for your dream career. Like, don't just go in right away because you may not have the best leadership, and that could like make or break your career.
So true. That's such good advice. What would you say? I'm going to ask you for one more little piece. What would you say would be one way that we could become a survivor once we're out of the military?
I think just taking advantage of all the things that you get when you're out, your GI Bill, going back to school, because with college, you learn so many things that you didn't learn in elementary and high school, like all that. So you can really kind of try and find yourself with classes. And even if you don't want to go that route, there's voc rehab. And like, I just think all those programs for veterans are good to do, especially for your mind. And then as much as I'm not super happy with the VA, I'm grateful I have healthcare. So filing your disability and trying to get healthcare is helpful. But I think the biggest thing is just advocating for yourself because I feel like I've gone so many years just taking what I'm told to the point where it's like almost traumatic. You go through so many things that are re-triggering, especially in the healthcare, reproductive health with women, biopsies, leaps, and procedures, and you just start feeling like you're a lab rat. And so I think just taking control of your own body and your own health and what's happening right now, women are trying to say, my body, my choice, demanding a referral. I've even had to fire a doctor that I felt super uncomfortable and anxious with. And I just viewed her as kind of demonic, and I just think it's okay. And these are things I didn't know until I talked to civilian friends. Like, you can request a different doctor if you're not comfortable. You can speak up and you don't have to like stay in toxic friendships or relationships or with toxic doctors. Sometimes it's better to just do you, you know? So I think that's big.
Huge advice. Sometimes it's better to just do you. I agree. And toxic doctors, yes, I have had many. We won't go down the I had got diagnosed with fibromyalgia rabbit hole in 1999 when nobody really knew about it and all the toxic doctors I had to experience trying to get help. And I know so many people who listen to this podcast are disabled vets too, and they know what I'm talking about and they know what you mean, especially through VA healthcare with toxic doctors. So that was a very good point to bring up and remind us all that we are our own best advocate and we have to
Mhm.
like take our health into our own hands. I stopped taking everything that they told me to take and decided to take a
Yeah, and
holistic
things have
approach.
they have side effects. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I feel so much better. I thought I was going to die when I was turning 40. I thought legitimately I was going to die soon. Like I didn't have a lot of time left. I got off all of that stuff. I started seeing a natural path. And that is why I do interviews with people about cutting edge alternative medical therapies. We've talked about ketamine infusion. We've talked about ganglion block. We've talked about medicinal marijuana on this podcast. We've talked about microdosing. We've
Mhm.
talked about all of this stuff on this podcast. You will see these things are not talked about a lot yet, but they're medicinal in ways that can help us, especially as veterans, that it's worth doing your own research about.
Yeah, for
Find the
sure.
things that help you, whether it's holistic, whether it's going vegan, whatever it is that can help you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, and physically on your path of recovering from your experience or from any, experience you've had where you're not at your 100% best is worth it. Right. So lots of
Yeah.
great advice from you
I
today.
one last thing, I did go vegetarian. Well, I was vegan for a year and then I switched over to vegetarianism. I do think that definitely helped too.
Yeah.
And medicinal marijuana and
Mm.
starting in
Yeah.
2020 help with
Yeah.
panic attacks.
Yeah, see? It does help. You've gotta find your thing, and sometimes it might be trial and error,
Yeah.
but, you've gotta find the things that work for you. For me, CBD, medical marijuana, as far for my fibromyalgia pain, it helps me
Mhm.
to function. Like, I don't do it often, but, like, when I'm in so much pain, it really, really helps me. Microdosing mushrooms, you'll see the studies are being done right now. There's more and more evidence coming out, and you'll see in the next coming years how the world is changing with regards to the mindset about this. Look, the president just changed marijuana, how it was scheduled, right, as a
Mhm.
drug. We're not there yet, right? It's still classified too high, but we're getting there. Eventually, we'll see it legal across the United States. I believe that. And I live in a legal state, by the way. So
Mhm.
it's just these things we got to do for ourselves because sometimes our doctors are toxic and sometimes Western medicine is a sick system, not a well
Mhm.
system, right?
Yep.
Not
To keep
sometimes, but
people sick. Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
So, and it comes to our diet and all of that. I'm not 100% plant based. I do enjoy very high quality meat. I don't eat a lot of it because it's expensive to get really good meat, grass fed and all of that, but it makes such a difference
Mhm.
and it makes such a difference eating a lot of dark green leafy plants, right? Like it makes such a difference in how I feel every day. And it helps me to be able to do this podcast and all of that stuff. So I'm with you on that. I think we have to find what works for us. And it's not necessarily, I was on like 20 pills a day at one point in my 30s. So,
Yeah.
and I definitely took something that made me want to kill myself within a
Yeah.
week. And I am like the happiest. Even when I'm depressed, I'm one of the happiest persons you will ever meet. No one would know. No one knows if I'm depressed. Let me tell you. Okay. You can't tell the difference, or maybe slightly. You think I'm slightly less happy than I normally am. But I took something and my family did an intervention and they're like, You're on, we're suicide watching you. And I'm like, You're doing what? Have you heard what you've been talking about and saying to like, what are you taking? It was
Mhm.
so quick within a week of me taking it. Usually it takes like 2 weeks for medicines to get into your bloodstream. And within
Mhm.
like a week, I was already just saying crazy suicidal things. And my family intervened, thank God. And that was like my first indication like, hey, wait a minute, maybe all these drugs that I'm trying are not helping me. You know what I mean? But yeah, I feel you. Great advice. And again, I want to thank you so much for coming to the Female Veterans Podcast and sharing your story. It is a big one. And I really hope that people hear what you went through and they can understand how strong you are and go and read your book so that they can learn how to become that strong too.
Thank you for having me.
It's been my pleasure. Is there anywhere we can follow along your journey if we want to connect with you? I know you're on Instagram, but or you don't want
Yeah.
nobody following your journey. It's okay. It's all right. We don't have to do that. What we can do, you know what we'll do? We'll say this. I will put a link to her book in the description box below, and you can support Ashton by buying her book. We'll leave it there. How is that?
Yeah, that works.
All right, then. So I really appreciate you. Thank you so much for being a guest today.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I love you guys so much. Thank you for coming on this journey with me. I appreciate you more than you know. Remember, go to the femaleveteranspodcast.com if you want to be a guest, sign up to get the new newsletter that's going to be dropping soon, probably in June. Finally, my new assistants are finally trained and we're getting ready to go off to the races. Follow me on Instagram at the Female Veterans Podcast and at FemVet Podcast on X, formerly Twitter. And keep listening. I'm on YouTube. Please go subscribe. I'm trying to grow the podcast there as well. I'll be doing video episodes too. So if you want to be on a video episode, you'll have to let me know when you submit your information. And with that, I want to just say thank you and I love you. And I will see you next time.